Hello, I'm Chief Warrant Officer 4 Vic Pinion, U.S. Navy, retired, telling some stories of my naval career. Well, this one was when I was serving aboard the aircraft carrier John F. Kennedy CV-67 as a Catapult and Rescue Visual Landing Gauge maintenance officer. This story is about cracking, breaking Catapult launch valve room hydraulic piping when it sprayed a carcinogenic hydraulic fluid around in the launch valve rooms, and the many temporary repairs and my efforts, not just mine, but some other people's efforts too, to get that piping identified as what's causing it to break and get it replaced. The maintenance chief and the bow Catapult chief had been stationed aboard us, Doug Cheney and Ricky Neely. They had been stationed aboard the ship for about a year or so before I reported aboard. And they had been experiencing the hydraulic piping in the launch valve rooms cracking and spraying hydraulic fluid around, and having to address that. And what had been doing is, the ship had been doing it maybe for the whole life of the ship. But what they would do is they'd go in there and they would just weld a big ball of weld on the crack until it stopped leaking and continue launching aircraft. Well, when that piping would crack and spray fluid around like that, they had to shut that Catapult down. And it almost always happened during launching cycles. So they would have to take the aircraft off of that Catapult, taxi it around, put it on a different, and the whole thing caused problems on the flight deck, and probably caused some crunchies running airplanes into things, and the jet blast blowing things around on the deck and so forth, because it's an unscheduled event. It also delayed the completion of the launch, which also delayed the beginning of the aircraft recovery, which delayed the end of the recovery complete, which delayed the arming and refueling and servicing of the general servicing of the aircraft and respotting them in preparation for the next launch, which would delay the start of, and a big ball rolling downhill. And that, I'm sure, caused a lot of problems on that flight decks of most aircraft carriers, or if not every one of them. In any case, they pointed that out to me during my initial tour of the Catapults and showed me in the current ship's maintenance project, the CSMP, which is a computer printout of jobs that have been deferred until they can be done, for that piping to be replaced during the upcoming ship's overhaul that's going to start about 7 months or so, or longer than that, about a year from now. The Type Commander Ship Installations Officer came out to the ship during our deployment, doing the final work definition for the overhaul. Well, he would not fund that, replacing that piping. Because a very expensive job. He funded inspecting it and promised me that he would have any of it that didn't meet specifications replaced. So, okay, I can't argue with that. So we pulled into the shipyard came in, and there were some problems with inspecting it because he had not specified exactly what things were to be inspected, what they were to be inspected for, and so forth. So I assigned Chief Rick Neely, to stay right with those guys and make sure they did a good job. Well, we had to get the job rewritten, which cost AirLamp some money to do a more thorough inspection, which they did. That inspection revealed the piping. Not only did it have a lot of old temporary repairs like a big balls of weld wherever it had cracked, but they discovered that that piping was manufactured to only half the wall thickness that the blueprint specified, which meant that the shipyard that initially made it and installed it had cut some big corners and had put only half, maybe even less than half, the strength piping in there that the blueprint specified. Well, we had to do a whole bunch of additional paperwork to get the job order revised to get them to replace that piping. Well, guess what? During the process of replacing it, my CAFSU rep discovered that they were welding the old rusted thread pieces and union nuts onto that new piping, the old rusty ones that they'd cut off the old piping, which had the thread height reduced through corrosion. Well, and it was in their job order to replace them. And I went enforcing that issue, and in the process, we discovered that they're using the old piping as a template for making the new, and that they had made the new piping for the #1 Catapult the same as the old piping, with the only half strength, the 80 instead of 160 wall thickness piping. Schedule 80 instead of schedule 160. I blew a cork over that, went over to the ship repair facility and got a meeting with them all, and they really had a yellow screaming fit with the Shop 56 supervisor, and the shipyard production officer, a Navy captain, stepped in and said, "Bosun, I've got it. We will make your piping over." And they did. But then that job order had only been written to do #1 Catapult. It hadn't been written to include Cats 2, 3, and 4. We had to get another job order written to include Cats 2, 3, and 4. Now, I went and talked with the ship installation officer. He said, I said, "Being how we've discovered this problem on Cat 1, we can assume that all 4 cats are that way. The inspection of the piping is discovered to be very expensive, and then the replacement of it is very expensive also, adding to almost doubling the cost." He said, "Well, the job order to inspect it and reports already written will go that way." And we did. Sure enough, Cats 2, 3, and 4 had the half strength piping, and we had to write another job order to replace it on Cats 2, 3, and 4. But now they had the capsule rep inspect and report, only replace those that would seriously be in danger of putting an airplane in the water if they failed during a cat shop. And those are the only ones they replaced. I didn't like that, but there was nothing else I could do about it. But we did get that piping replaced during that overhaul. I'm very proud of that. I stuck to my guns. I pressed the issue, and we got it done. That's the end of the story. Y'all carry on.